Spygate is the term that is used to describe the fact that members of the Obama administration spied on a rival political presidential campaign, even though Trump never did anything wrong. The hard truth that the spying occurred is not up for debate. The only questions left are, was it justified? Was it legal? And how far up the chain did it go? But there are so many names and so much stuff going on that it gets really confusing really fast. Today, I'm going to break this story down. There were 3 plans that were deployed against the Trump team, and this video will be broken down into those plans. During Plan A, there was unofficial foreign intelligence gathering, unmasking, and FISA 702 query abuse occurring. They got caught during Plan A and moved on to Plan B, which involved getting a FISA warrant with no valid evidence of wrongdoing and launching the FBI counterintelligence investigation that was called Crossfire Hurricane. Plan C came after the election, and that involved getting President Trump out of office by any means necessary. It's October 9th in 2016 during the second presidential debate.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton should have been concerned that she was going to lose the election, but she wasn't. You see, there was a whole team of people working behind the scenes to make sure that Donald Trump never became president. Donald Trump announced that he was running for president on June 16th in 2015. A lot of people didn't take him seriously. They thought it was part of a publicity stunt in order to increase ratings on his other shows. But by November in 2015, it was established that he was a serious contender, and that is when the spying began. The first step of the spying process began on July 20th in 2015. Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates put out a 58-page memo telling the Inspector General to go kick rocks. The FBI and the Department of Justice, particularly the National Security Division, didn't have to turn over all records like everyone else, particularly those involving Title III, which is wiretapping. Because who wants oversight when you're about to break the law? And besides, there was no Inspector General at state when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, so why start now? The first step happened so early into the presidential race that it makes me think that Team Hillary planned on spying on whoever the Republican nominee was, and Trump just so happened to be the guy that won. Now, with what they thought was the successful minimization of oversight in place, Team Hillary launched Plan A in November of 2015. They figured out that they could get all the opposition research they wanted by using a combination of using unofficial Five Eyes information, unmasking, and abusing the FISA 702 query process. Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance made up of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the US. In late 2015, CIA Director John Brennan began receiving unofficial Five Eyes information about a possible Trump-Russia connection. We know that the intelligence was unofficial because Congressman Devin Nunes stated in April of 2018 there was never any official intelligence used to open the FBI counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign. Robert Hannigan, the director of the UK's GCHQ, which is responsible for signals intelligence, even traveled to America to meet with Brennan in the summer of 2016 to pass him information. This was odd because the GCHQ is the UK's equivalent of the NSA. Brennan's counterpart would have been the head of MI6. Hannigan's counterpart would have been NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers, not CIA Director Brennan. So British officials that were supposed to be our allies were helping the Obama administration spy on Trump, who never colluded with Russia. Could it have been related to Trump's pro-Brexit stance and him being tough on the EU? I don't know. Only time will tell. Brennan was also taking part in unmasking members of the Trump campaign, which can occur with incidental collection. Incidental collection happens when a person is in contact with a surveillance target. So if I email Bob and Bob is under surveillance, even if I just say, hey, nice mustache, my email gets collected. Incidental collection can happen under Title III of the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968, which means going to court and getting a warrant because a U.S. citizen is being targeted. Incidental collection can also occur under FISA Titles I and III, which is called traditional FISA. Once again, a warrant is needed for this process because it applies to people, property, or facilities inside of the United States, and when the proposed target is believed to be a foreign power or an agent of a foreign power. Additionally, incidental collection also happens when you are dealing with surveillance pursuant to Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act. Surveillance under 702 does not require a warrant because it's supposed to target foreign terrorists on foreign soil. The Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence have complete discretion over who the targets for surveillance are, and the standard for surveillance is much lower. It's simply for foreign intelligence information. Reverse targeting, which is the targeting of a foreigner with the intent of getting information on an American citizen, is strictly prohibited. If a surveillance target is communicating with an American citizen, minimization procedures are supposed to take effect. Part of those procedures include changing the citizen's name to U.S. Person 1 in order to protect the privacy of that citizen when a classified intelligence report is made. Unmasking is the term used when the American citizen's name is revealed. It can only be done for national security purposes and when the name of the citizen will help give context to the information. Leaking unmasked names is a criminal offense, and unmasking Americans for reasons other than national security is called espionage. And under federal law, espionage is a felony that can carry the death penalty.
So first, I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions, the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Third, I have confirmed that additional names of Trump transition team members were unmasked. And fourth and finally, I want to be clear, none of this surveillance was related to Russia or the investigation of Russian activities or of the Trump team.
CIA Director John Brennan, UN Ambassador Samantha Power, National Security Advisor Susan Rice, and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper are just some of the Obama administration officials that are guilty of unmasking members of the Trump team.
Mr. Clapper and Ms. Yates, did either of you ever request the unmasking of Mr. Trump, his associates, or any member of Congress?
Yes.
The unmasking of the Trump team associates would continue even after the election. Finally, in November of 2015, around the same time John Brennan was receiving unofficial Five Eyes intelligence information, the FBI was abusing the FISA 702 query process. There are two ways that the NSA gathers information under FISA Section 702. Downstream collection, which was previously known as PRISM, and upstream collection.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
For downstream collection, the NSA gets user information directly from U.S. companies like Facebook, Google, Skype, and YouTube. With upstream collection, the NSA essentially wiretaps the underwater fiber optic cables that the vast majority of global internet traffic flows through. Intelligence analysts can then run different kinds of searches or queries on the data the NSA collected by entering selectors into the system. Selectors are things like names, email addresses, phone numbers, IP addresses, and keywords. 702.16s are to and from queries. That means you can search the upstream and downstream data and retrieve any information that is sent to or is sent from a foreign target of surveillance that is on foreign soil. There are also 702.17s, which are about queries. These are only available from searching the upstream data. These messages simply mention or are about a foreign surveillance target that is on foreign soil. So if I sent an email that said, "I hate terrorist Joe," to a friend of mine in the US, my totally domestic email could be captured without a warrant. Fortunately, about queries ended under the Trump administration. Querying the NSA database will give you all kinds of information, like emails, social media account data, voice and video chats, and photographs. As you can see, having access to raw FISA 702 data could be a powerful weapon if it fell into the wrong hands. And that's exactly what the FBI did deliberately and illegally. The FBI gave private contractors, people with no legal authority whatsoever, access to raw FISA data. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's all detailed in a 99-page, unsealed Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court report dated April 26th of 2017. The contractor's access was not limited to the raw information for which the FBI had sought assistance, and the private contractor's access continued even after their work for the FBI had been completed. The names of the private contractors that the FBI broke the law to give access to have been redacted. But according to former U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Joe diGenova, those contractors included Fusion GPS and CrowdStrike. I'll be explaining who those contractors are during Plan B.
It is believed that among those contractors were Fusion GPS and CrowdStrike. And I've seen two reports about CrowdStrike being among the private contractors that were given access to raw 702 incidental collection of American citizens under FISA warrants. If that is true, they have committed crimes. The Bureau who gave them information committed crimes.
The FBI may have gotten away with their criminal activity if it wasn't for the heroic efforts of one man. And that man was NSA Director Admiral Mike Rogers. It's worth noting that most of the people that worked for the government agencies that were involved with the spying were good people. There were just a few bad hombres at the top that conducted themselves in a possibly treasonous fashion. So between late 2015 and early 2016, Admiral Rogers noticed something strange was going on with the 702 queries. On January 7th of 2016, NSA Inspector General George Ellard wrote a report noting that there were 702 violations occurring, including using American citizens' information to query the upstream data, which really isn't supposed to happen because 702 upstream queries are supposed to target foreign terrorists on foreign soil. Admiral Rogers turned around and ordered a fundamental baseline review of compliance associated with 702. But the review wouldn't be completed until October 20th of 2016. On March 9th in 2016, Department of Justice oversight personnel reported the FBI had been giving private contractors access to raw FISA data.
The Obama administration figures out that through unmasking, in other words, wiretapping people, pretending they're targeting foreigners, and then querying information in this database, that they can get all the political opposition research in the world that they need against the Trump team. It's beautiful. No one's going to call them out. The media's on their side, right? Mike Rogers of the NSA senses that there's something wrong about these about queries. In other words, who's tapping into the database here and making political queries? Because Mike Rogers goes to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court and says, Houston, we got a problem. These queries are supposed to follow very specific guidelines about terrorism and all these metrics have to be. You can't just spy on Americans in the database.
On April 18th of 2016, Admiral Rogers shut down the FBI's private contractor access to raw FISA data while his investigation continued. Also on March 9th of 2016, the same day the DOJ reported about the FBI's FISA abuse, Lisa Page sent a text to Peter Strzok saying that the FBI had messed up in a major way. Meet Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They're both married, just not to each other. He's a high-level FBI agent and she is a top FBI lawyer. You would think that holding those kinds of positions would mean that you were smart, but you'd be wrong. These two lovebirds are going to text each other all kinds of fun stuff, like how much they love Hillary and how much they hate Trump and evidence that can be used against them in a court of law.
Agent Strzok had Hillary Clinton winning the White House before he finished investigating her. Agent Strzok had Donald Trump impeached before he even started investigating him. Agent Strzok thinks pronouncing someone innocent before bothering to interview more than 30 different witnesses isn't bias. He thinks claiming you can smell the Trump supporters isn't bias. He thinks talking about an insurance policy to keep someone from becoming president isn't bias. And he said Trump would be destabilizing, called him an idiot, abysmal, bigoted nonsense, called him a disaster. Said he should F himself. Strzok promised to stop Trump from becoming president before the investigation even began. He talked longingly of Trump resigning 2 months after he was inaugurated and well before the special counsel investigation even began. Strzok even talked about impeachment the day special counsel was appointed. That is prejudging guilt, it is prejudging punishment, and it is textbook bias.
If you want to represent what you said accurately, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't appreciate what was originally said being changed.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok. I don't appreciate having an FBI agent with an unprecedented level of animus working on 2 major investigations during 2016.
You would think that you'd at least use a burner phone if you were about to follow the yellow brick road down to Treason Town. That's right, they got caught up in a hurricane, a crossfire hurricane. Plan A was over and done with because they got caught. And since their avenue to illegally spy on the Trump team by tapping into the FISA 702 data had been cut off, Team Hillary decided to try spying on the Trump team legally. Sort of. By assembling an interagency task force, launching the FBI counterintelligence operation called Crossfire Hurricane, and obtaining a FISA warrant. FISA warrants come with a 2-hop rule. That means that when they took out a warrant on Carter Page, they got to hop to or analyze the communications of everyone that he contacted, like his boss, and then hop a second time to analyze the records of everyone that his boss contacted, like Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, basically everyone in the campaign. And FISA warrants are retroactive, meaning that it allowed them to go back and look at records from years prior. A FISA warrant would have been perfect for Team Hillary because it involved using a secret court, and so when Hillary Clinton won all of this, it would all be swept under the rug. Now, I think they were drunk when they came up with Plan B. They never thought that Trump would win. They believed their own fake news media polls and reports saying that Trump had no chance of winning. They all just sat around drinking their own spiked Kool-Aid. So Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, accompanied by FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and FBI Director James Comey, met up, and the heartless, brainless cowards decided to follow the yellow brick road down to Treasontown, where CIA Director John Brennan had assembled an interagency task force so that both domestic and foreign intelligence agencies could all meet at the CIA headquarters in Langley and share information on Trump in or before April of 2016.
Orange Man bad.
Brennan had received a bogus tip from one of the Baltic states that the Trump campaign was receiving money from Russia, which led in part to the now debunked conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton pushed, that she wasn't the only one with a secret server. No, Trump had one too. And it was inside of Trump Tower, and it had been set up to communicate privately with a Putin-tied Russian bank called Alpha Bank that was owned by Alpha Group.
What is your problem?
I'm sorry. I'm allergic to bullcrap.
Guards!
Hey, don't you think this whole the Republican candidate is in league with Russia narrative is just a bit worn out? I mean, we just used this one against John McCain, citing McCain's ties to Paul Manafort. The same Paul Manafort that we're now saying ties Trump to Russia? I mean, we're not even changing the people in this tired script. Oh! Democratic operatives of every ilk crawled out from under their rocks to assist the Clinton campaign in any way they could. Who or what in the heck are you? I'm Alexandria Chalupa, a DNC operative. I'm going to tell Politico all about how the Ukrainian embassy worked directly with me and investigative journalists researching Trump, Paul Manafort, and Russia. Wait, you're going to tell Politico that you were colluding with a foreign nation in order to influence a presidential election while you were working as a contractor for the DNC? Yep, the DNC already knows all about it. I did good, right? You can't possibly be that stupid. So I'm going to retract my statement. Oh, you think? Yeah, retract your statement. Now go. Just go. Brennan's interagency task force in Langley gave Team Hillary a great place to meet and strategize. There were 7 things they needed to do during Plan B. Number 1, illegally exonerate Hillary Clinton for mishandling classified emails. Number 2, set up George Papadopoulos so there is a reason to open an official investigation. Number 3, pick a person to falsely accuse of being a Russian agent in order to get a FISA warrant. Number 4, find someone to make up and write up lies. Number 5, set up even more Trump campaign members. Number 6, fake a defensive briefing to spy on candidate Trump and General Michael Flynn. And number 7, verify and submit lies to the court. Number 1, illegally exonerate Hillary Clinton for mishandling classified emails. There is too much information on this subject for me to put it all in this video. So quickly, in March of 2015, the world learned that Hillary Clinton had exclusively used a private email address and had a secret server in her basement when she was Secretary of State. When she left her position in 2013, she did not turn over her email records in violation of the Federal Records Act. It didn't matter what laws she broke, the fix was in. Andrew McCabe made sure she got special treatment.
And we have email evidence from Andrew McCabe indicating that Hillary Clinton was going to get a HQ special, a headquarters special. That meant that the normal processes at the Washington field office weren't followed.
Attorney General Loretta Lynch instructed FBI Director Comey to call it a matter instead of an investigation. And Peter Strzok helped Comey draft Hillary Clinton's exoneration letter before she was even interviewed. So no one cared when Loretta Lynch didn't recuse herself after she met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, or that Andy McCabe's wife, Jill McCabe, got almost $500,000 from a PAC that Hillary Clinton raised money for her Senate race, or that 33,000 of her emails were deleted after she received a subpoena, or that Hillary Clinton's aide smashed her phones with a hammer, or that her server was wiped with BleachBit before it was turned over to the FBI, or that her server had information on it from the intelligence communities, or that her emails were hacked by China, which could explain how the Chinese were able to imprison or execute 18 to 20 people working with the CIA from 2010 to 2012, which just so happened to be during the years she was Secretary of State.
I've actually spoken to the members of DOD who discovered this flaw. This flaw was discovered by the intelligence community part of the Department of Defense. It was the ODNI Inspector General's office, and they did a full evaluation. They received the same copy of the email server and all the emails that the FBI had. They looked at the metadata. So every email, as you know, and your audience probably knows, within the data which moves the email, there's router information that indicates who sent the email, when it was sent, how it was sent, the route it took, and anybody else who gets copies of it. So within this very deep metadata review, the ODNI IG discovered that in every email except for like 7 were being sent to a third party. That third party was apparently, I'm told, a business that is in Manassas, Virginia, and that business was owned or is owned by the Chinese intelligence service. And there was a drop at this place, and then it was sent off to Chicago, is what I was briefed. And what's significant about this is not so much that I know, it's the fact that according to the ODNI IG, Peter Strzok, the guy in charge of the Clinton email investigation within the FBI, was briefed on this 3 times. The 2 implications are, first, anything that Hillary Clinton had on its server was compromised to the Chinese intelligence service, which indicates to me that by law, there's supposed to be a damage assessment conducted by this compromise. Jim Clapper, when he was ODNI himself, was asked about, why haven't you done a damage assessment? And he just said, I just don't want to do it. I don't think, that's a good answer. Secondly, there is other evidence the Chinese have been very effective in eating our lunch. We lost a number of assets back about 2011, 2012 in Beijing. We've never recovered from that. And there's other indicators the Chinese are very effective in their intelligence collection programs against us. So I think we need to do a review of everything we're doing to figure out why the Chinese are so effective.
There was an Inspector General for the House, and she was brilliant. She had a notebook with all kinds of information about the investigation that firmly established what appeared to be crimes being committed. Sure. The FBI did not interview her until 2 or 3 days before the sentencing hearing. And basically they called her in and told her, do not, under any circumstances, bring your notebook or anything with you. You just come, don't bring anything. And then what I understood was the FBI reported back to Jeff Sessions. We looked into it, and the IG, she doesn't have anything. And they spent over 2 hours basically threatening her that they would come after her if she didn't drop it. That's the kind of deep state we're talking about. The Inspector General of the intelligence community, our intelligence, came forward, told the FBI, including Peter Strzok, we have 100% certainty, we got proof, and the FBI released a statement at the end of August saying, we have no evidence that her private server was ever hacked. Yeah, because you refused to accept the evidence.
We did not find direct evidence that Secretary Clinton's personal email domain, in its various configurations since 2009, was hacked successfully. Finally, with respect to our recommendation to the Department of Justice, although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
And how did Hillary Clinton react to all of this?
I never sent classified material on my email, and I never received any that was marked classified.
Hold on. Did that lying witch really just go out there and say that as Secretary of State, not as Secretary of a dentist office, but as Secretary of State, she never sent or received any classified information? Which, please?
I will reiterate, because it's a fact, nothing I sent or received was marked classified.
Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails, either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true.
Everything I did was permitted by law and regulation. I had one device.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
I responded right away and provided all my emails that could possibly be work-related. We turned over everything that was work-related, every single thing.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
You were the official in charge. Did you like this order?
What, like with a cloth or something? Well, no.
Secretary Clinton said neither she nor anyone else deleted work-related emails from her personal account. Was that true?
That's a harder one to answer. We found traces of work-related emails on devices or in Slack space, whether they were deleted or whether when a server was changed out, something happened to them. There's no doubt that there were work-related emails that were removed electronically from the email system.
So you have a rogue email system set up before she took the oath of office. Thousands of what we now know to be classified emails, some of which were classified at the time. One of her more frequent email comrades was in fact hacked, and you don't know whether or not she was. And this scheme took place over a long period of time and resulted in the destruction of public records, and yet you say there is insufficient evidence of intent.
I've never had a subpoena. Now, I didn't have to turn over anything. I chose to turn over 55,000 pages of my emails.
And drawing on what you just said, that very few, but no requests for Benghazi came to your attention, I'd like to show you something. This pile represents the emails that you sent or received about Libya in 2011, from February through December of 2011. This pile represents the emails you sent or received from early 2012 until the day of the attack. There are 795 emails in this pile. We've counted them. There are 67 emails in this pile in 2012. In this pile in 2011, I see daily updates, sometimes hourly updates, from your staff about Benghazi and Chris Stevens. When I look at this pile in 2012, I only see a handful of emails to you from your senior staff about Benghazi. There is not one email to you or from you in 2012 when an explosive device went off at our compound in April. There's not a single email in your records about that explosive device. So my question is, this was a very important mission in 2011. You sent Chris Stevens there, but yet when our compound is attacked in 2012, what kind of culture was created in the State Department that your folks couldn't tell you in an email about a bomb in April of 2012?
If you were to be in my office in the State Department, I didn't have a computer. I did not conduct most of the business that I did on behalf of our country on email.
Number 2, set up George Papadopoulos so there is a reason to open an official investigation. Explaining what happened in the Spygate saga is difficult because there are two different versions of the story. There's the Team Hillary version that the fake news media happily spread to harm President Trump's reputation, and then there's the truth. Team Hillary needed an official reason to open the FBI Operation Crossfire Hurricane so they could get a FISA warrant. And according to the New York Times, that reason was George Papadopoulos, not the Steele dossier.
We need a reason to open Operation Crossfire Hurricane, even though Trump is innocent.
Let's go after George Papadopoulos.
Excellent.
George Papadopoulos was a 28-year-old foreign policy advisor for the Trump campaign. In the Team Hillary version of the story, Papadopoulos first met Maltese professor Joseph Misuse in Italy on March 14th of 2016. They met up again in London, where Misuse introduced him to several Russians. Then, on April 26th of 2016, Misuse told Papadopoulos that the Russians had dirt on Hillary in the form of thousands of emails. This was before the public knew about the DNC hack. A few weeks later, Papadopoulos got rip-roaring drunk and told Australian diplomat Alexander Downer about the Russians having emails and dirt on Hillary. Australian officials passed that information to their counterparts in America 2 months later when the leaked DNC emails were published online. And the FBI responded by launching Operation Crossfire Hurricane on July 31st of 2016. In the Team Hillary version of the story, Misuse was portrayed as a Russian asset that was acting as an intermediary between Russia and the Trump campaign via Papadopoulos. There are a couple of problems with this account. First, George Papadopoulos could not have been the reason they began the investigation because Team Hillary was spying on the Trump campaign before Papadopoulos was even associated with it.
As you know, for a long time, FBI DOJ have been claiming that they didn't do anything until the end of July. That's not true. This investigation started in early 2016, and I actually believe it's possible it even started in late 2015.
Second, Papadopoulos stated that he didn't accidentally meet Misuse. His introduction to Misuse was facilitated in part by FBI lawyer Avinder Sambe. And Misuse wasn't a Russian spy. He was working with Western intelligence.
I don't understand why the FBI told the world that this was a Russian agent when the truth is that I was introduced to him by an FBI intermediary. I met him at a Western intelligence spy school in Rome, and that this man's entire career and network involves himself meeting with high-level British and American intelligence officials, including after I told the FBI that he was a potential Russian agent. And his own lawyer has made unambiguous statements about who he is, and that is that this man was no Russian agent. This man was working on behalf of Western intelligence and was actively, probably under the guidance of the FBI itself, when he was interacting with George Papadopoulos. Even the FBI, in my meeting with them in December, where I asked them in a very naive way, why are you not arresting Joseph Misuse? I told you a year ago that this man told me about Russian emails, and now I see pictures of him online with the UK's Foreign Minister Boris Johnson in London. Haven't you notified MI6, the MI5? And the FBI agents are laughing at me.
It is impossible that Misuse, Professor Misuse, is a Russian asset. He was a former diplomat with the Malta government. He lived in Italy. He worked and taught FBI, trained FBI officials, and worked with FBI officials.
Third, the meeting with Downer wasn't by chance either. Downer sought him out. He wasn't drunk. He only had one drink, and he believes that Downer and others were spying on him.
April 15th, the Australian government reached out to me for the first time. April 26th, Joseph Misuse tells me this information. May 2nd, I have the British government reaching out to me from this man Tobias Elwood, who was the number 2 at the British Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where he wants to have a conversation with me and get to know me a little bit. May 4th, I'm contacted by 2 officials of the DIA at the U.S. Embassy in London named Gregory Baker and Terence Dudley. And then I meet on May 10th this Australian diplomat, Alexander Downer, who I testified under oath at Congress and told the FBI and Bob Mueller that I felt he was spying on me and recording my conversation.
So there was never a situation where Papadopoulos was working with the Russians to try to affect the 2016 election. This was all a setup.
But Team Hillary had a problem. Papadopoulos didn't spread the information about the Russians having Hillary's emails around the Trump campaign like they hoped he would. And in response, Team Hillary sent several spies to try and get Papadopoulos to admit he was in league with the Russians. And these were spies, not informants, because informants are people inside of an organization. Spies are outsiders, and these people definitely were not part of the Trump campaign.
We are sending spies into the Trump campaign. The best of the best. No one will ever see them coming. Azra, Honey Trap Turk, and Stefan Halper, whose code name is the Walrus.
Stefan the Walrus Halper made contact with several Trump campaign members. The first was Trump campaign foreign policy advisor Carter Page on July 11th of 2016, which was weeks before Crossfire Hurricane officially opened. Next was National Co-Chairman Sam Clovis, and finally, George Papadopoulos on September 2nd of 2016. The Walrus offered to pay Papadopoulos $3,000 to write a paper for him, but first, Papadopoulos would have to meet his assistant, Azra Honey Trap Turk, in mid-September of 2016.
She was very provocative, let's say scantily dressed at best, okay? And she wants to try and seduce me and get me to say things that aren't true. For example, about Russia and all this, nonsense. I basically say, okay, I don't know what you're talking about.
The next day, he met with the Walrus.
I had no idea who Stefan Halper was until he emailed me out of the blue on, I think, September 2nd, 2016, where he wanted to basically pay me to hear my thoughts. He says, I want to meet with you. So we meet over drinks, and he pulls his phone out. So right away, I think this guy's doing something that he shouldn't be doing. And he tells me, George, it's obviously, in your interest to be working with Russia, to hack emails, and that the Russians are helping you, and that you're complicit in this conspiracy. Isn't that right, George? These open-ended, very strange things. And I told him flat out, I don't know what you're talking about. What you're talking about is treason. I have zero information about what you're talking about, and neither does anyone on the campaign, so just leave me alone.
So they didn't place spies in the campaign, but they sent spies to record senior members of the campaign in the middle of a presidential campaign when that candidate was the nominee for the other major party that was the opposing party to the one in power. Is that right?
They send confidential human sources in to do those.
FBI sent someone in, pretending to be somebody else, to talk with George Papadopoulos, who was with the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? It's called spying. They did it.
Mifsud was connected to Italian intelligence, and both Downer and Mifsud had MI6 and Five Eyes ties. Now here's the kicker. They were both Clinton guys. Not only was he a donor, but Mifsud told the Italian news that he's a Clinton Foundation member, and Downer helped secure and personally signed off on a $25 million donation to the Clinton Foundation from the Australian government. So the FBI made sure Papadopoulos met Mifsud, who was Clinton guy number one.
Mifsud was the guy who set up Papadopoulos.
Clinton guy number one inserted the information. Clinton guy number two, Downer, extracted the information, and Clinton guys numbers 3 and 4 tried to get Papadopoulos to cop to a crime he didn't commit. Number 3, pick a person to falsely accuse of being a Russian agent in order to get a FISA warrant.
We are going to have to pick someone in the Trump campaign and say that they are a Russian agent to get this FISA warrant. Any suggestions?
Hey, how about Carter Page?
Who is Carter Page?
He's one of Trump's foreign policy advisors. He's had contact with Russian spies. Yeah, but we already know Carter Page isn't a spy because he's been working with the FBI since 2013 to help convict an actual Russian spy. Guys, this is all documented. Besides, why would Putin trust a man that is helping the FBI to lock up Russian spies? You guys have to be smarter than this.
Guards!
Oh, seriously? This whole FISA warrant thing was a hoax from the start. They knew Carter Page wasn't a spy from the very beginning. That's why they never even bothered to charge him. The FBI had information that the DNC's computer system had been compromised as early as 2015, and they decided to pin that on Trump too. On June 14th in 2016, the Washington Post published an article saying Russian government hackers penetrated the DNC. Russia said they didn't do it. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who would go on to leak some of the DNC emails, said Russia didn't do it. Hacker Guccifer 2.0 said he did it and released more information. Then candidate Donald Trump said the DNC hacked itself. Next, information came out noting that the speed at which the stolen files were copied was faster than what consumer internet services can do, and therefore it was possible that someone with access to the DNC servers used a USB drive to steal the information in person. The FBI said Russia did it, which was funny because the FBI didn't do the investigation. So the DNC, that would have you believe that Trump worked with Russia to hack them, says, we have proof right here on our servers, but don't look at it. And they never gave the servers over to the FBI. And at the same time, the FBI said, national security? What national security? We don't want the full power of the U.S. government looking into this. No subpoenas necessary. But I think I heard something about Trump and some golden showers, so we better go check that out. The DNC used the law firm Perkins Coie to hire a private firm called CrowdStrike to do the investigation. CrowdStrike has many ties to Hillary Clinton, including several billionaires that are multi-million-dollar Clinton Foundation donors. CrowdStrike, which I'm sure isn't biased at all, came to the conclusion that Russia hacked the DNC, and that's the official story for now.
A federal investigator telling Fox News that an FBI forensic report of Rich's computer showed he made contact with WikiLeaks through a former reporter and London-based WikiLeaks director, Gavin McFadden. The investigator told Fox News Rich provided McFadden with more than 44,000 emails, nearly 18,000 attachments. Rich was murdered near his D.C. home on the morning of July 10th. But his wallet, his cell phone, his watch not taken. WikiLeaks 12 days later published internal emails showing top DNC officials trading ideas on how to hurt Senator Bernie Sanders at the polls, and those emails resulting in the resignation of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the chair of the DNC, and the DNC's 3 top officials.
Number 4, find someone to make up and write up lies. Team Hillary realized that in order to get the FISA warrant they so desperately wanted, they would need to supply the court with evidence of crimes that were never committed. So they decided to hire a chef that could sprinkle a little tinkle on this poop sandwich they were about to feed the American public. So in April of 2016, the Clinton campaign and the DNC paid the law firm Perkins Coie to hire the research firm Fusion GPS to write the infamous Steele dossier that was full of Russian lies. Fusion GPS turned around and hired former British spy Christopher Steele. The funny thing about Christopher Steele was that while he was being paid by Fusion GPS, he was also being paid by the FBI. The FBI made a series of 11 payments to him in 2016. Please, someone in this room has to have a brain. Christopher Steele is already being paid by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. We can't pay him to. Think of the paper trail.
Guards, take him away.
But no one had a brain. Fusion GPS also hired former CIA contractor Nellie Orr, who just so happened to be married to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr was an Associate Deputy Attorney General, the 4th highest ranked man in DOJ. His wife Nellie was getting money from Fusion GPS while he was assisting with the investigation into the Trump campaign by spreading the information that his family was financially profiting off of around the FBI and DOJ.
What we should be worried about is Bruce Orr, senior official at the Justice Department's wife, was working for the firm hired by the Clintons to put together the dossier. And we know the dossier was the key to all of this. And Bruce Orr, Peter Strzok told us in the hearing, Bruce Orr is the guy who funneled parts of the dossier to the FBI.
Fusion GPS was co-founded by Glenn Simpson, and Glenn Simpson was married to Mary Jacoby. On April 19th of 2016, the very next day after Admiral Rogers shut down private contractor access to the NSA database, Mary J. went to a meeting at the White House. Yep, nothing suspicious about that at all. Not at all. And while the media has been crediting Christopher Steele with writing the dossier, Mary J., not to be outdone, took to Facebook and posted that it was actually her husband that deserved all the credit for writing the dossier. And she was partially correct, because he started writing the dossier in 2007. That's right, 2007. In 2007, Mary J. and Glenn Simpson co-authored a piece in the Wall Street Journal titled How Lobbyists Help Ex-Soviets Woo Washington, featuring some of the same information and same players that appear in the dossier, like Paul Manafort, Viktor Yanukovych, and Alpha Group. Alpha Group owned Alpha Bank, the same bank from the phony Trump Tower server story, and Paul Manafort was demonized for his lobbying on behalf of the pro-Russian president of the Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych. And in 2008, when the Democrats tried to push the John McCain is in bed with Russia narrative, Glenn Simpson and Mary J. were right there, and they wrote an article called McCain Consultant is Tied to Work for Ukraine Party, once again featuring more people and information that would be lobbed against Trump. FBI Director Comey and the Democrats tried to push the lie that the Republicans funded the dossier.
My understanding was the activity was begun, that Steele was hired to look into, was first funded by Republicans.
But that's not true.
I'm sorry?
That's not true. That the dossier that Christopher Steele worked on was funded by Republicans?
The Washington Free Beacon, a conservative website, hired Fusion GPS to research some of the Republican primary candidates. They also hired separate firms to do research on Hillary Clinton. The Washington Free Beacon discontinued the services of Fusion GPS once Trump became the Republican nominee. To debunk the lying Democrats, the Washington Free Beacon revealed that the research provided by Fusion GPS was based on public sources. Christopher Steele was not involved, they did not pay for or have any knowledge of the dossier, and none of the work product that the Free Beacon received from Fusion GPS appeared in the Steele dossier. The dossier was comprised of 16 memos that ranged in date from June 20th of 2016 to December 13th of 2016. The dossier was a hot piece of garbage that read like bad tween fan fiction, and it was full of misspelled words. Hillary Clinton was cast as the good and pure heroine that Putin hated and feared. Hillary Clinton was so wonderful and amazing that no matter how hard they tried, the Russians just couldn't seem to find any dirt that would embarrass her. Nope, not one single thing. On the other hand, Trump was cast as a buffoon that cared more about hookers and golden showers than he did about money. And Putin was the greatest psychic of all time because way back in 2011, he thought to himself, I really need a Republican president that I can use as a puppet. Who should I choose? Paul Ryan? Nah, he's got too much experience. Mitt Romney? Nah, he's got too much of a chance of winning. I know. Reality TV star Donald Trump. That's who I'm gonna target. Seriously, the only thing you need to do to debunk the dossier is to read the dossier. I'm gonna say that again. The only thing you need to do to debunk the dossier is to read the dossier. It makes claims that are over the top and completely laughably ridiculous, all while contradicting itself. Paul Manafort, who was Trump's campaign chairman, was managing the collusion with Russia by using Carter Page as an intermediary. Carter Page, the Carter Page that everyone knew wasn't a spy, Carter Page. Carter Page helps put together a deal to give himself and Trump's associates up to a 19% privatized stake in Rosneft, a Russian energy company, in exchange for lifting sanctions. That would have been about $12 billion. That's billion with a B. It's beyond absurd. Russia only had to give the Clintons millions of dollars during the Uranium One scandal, so why wouldn't Putin just back Hillary? She's way less expensive. And another one of the dossier claims is that they have the PP tape on Trump so they can use it to blackmail him. Wouldn't blackmailing Trump be a lot easier than giving away $12 billion? At a time when Russia was dealing with huge budget deficits? Michael Cohen, Trump's personal lawyer, goes to Prague in order to pay off Russian hackers in this fairy tale. But Michael Cohen never went to Prague, and his passport proved it. Page 1 says, so far, Trump has declined various sweetener real estate business deals offered him in Russia in order to further the Kremlin's cultivation of him. Page 2 says, the Kremlin's cultivation operation on Trump also had comprised offering him various lucrative real estate development business deals in Russia, especially in relation to the ongoing 2018 World Cup soccer tournament. However, so far, for reasons unknown, Trump had not taken up any of these. But wait, the page before said he turned down real estate offers to further the Kremlin's cultivation of him. And now you don't know why? Page 8 says, finally, regarding Trump's claimed minimal investment profile in Russia, a separate source with direct knowledge said this had not been for want of trying. Trump's previous efforts had included exploring the real estate sector in St. Petersburg as well as Moscow. But in the end, Trump had to settle for the use of extensive sexual services there from local prostitutes rather than business success. Remember page 2 said that they offered him lucrative deals in relation to the World Cup? Well, St. Petersburg and Moscow, these two cities that Trump supposedly wants in on, are part of the World Cup package. Russia was building new stadiums and infrastructure in both of those cities. The Russians are supposedly offering him deals on a silver platter exactly where he wants, and the man that builds hotels all over the world is now suddenly so inept that he can do nothing but go to a brothel. I wasn't joking when I said this was poorly written. Finally, page 27. Trump had visited St. Petersburg on several occasions in the past and had been interested in doing business deals there involving real estate. The local business/political elite figure reported that Trump had paid bribes there to further his interests, but very discreetly and only through affiliated companies, making it very hard to prove. The local services industry source reported that Trump had participated in sex parties in the city too, but that all direct witnesses to this recently had been silenced, i.e. bribed or coerced to disappear. So he wants to build buildings. He doesn't want to build buildings. They offer him sweetheart real estate deals. He's got to bribe his way into the real estate market. Which one of these scenarios is supposed to be true? I mean, yes, we know that this is all lies, but seriously, did anybody read this? The dossier debunks itself. And as these dossier memos are being written, they're making their way back to the intelligence community through a number of channels. One such channel was with Bruce Orr at the Mayflower Hotel on July 30th of 2016, which just so happened to be the day before Operation Crossfire Hurricane was launched. Okay, why don't you read me what you got so far?
Trump's perverted conduct in Moscow included hiring the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where he knew President and Mrs. Obama, whom he hated had stayed on one of their official trips to Russia and defiling the bed where they had slept by employing a number of prostitutes to perform a golden showers urination show in front of him. The hotel was known to be under FSB control with microphones and concealed cameras in all the main rooms to record anything they wanted to. How does that sound to you, old chap? Seems legit.
Number 5. Set up even more Trump campaign members. While the dossier was being written, there still wasn't any evidence of the Trump campaign colluding with Russia, so Team Hillary decided to trump some up. Mysterious and shadowy figures had been approaching the Trump campaign left and right. The Walrus was doing his thing, Honey Trap was doing her thing, Alexander Downer was trying to figure out which version of the story he told about Papadopoulos was the truth. Mifsud was preparing to pack his bags because he was getting ready to vanish into thin air. And somebody should have told the manager of Trump Tower to call the exterminator because there were about to be some rats in the building. June 9th of 2016 was the date the infamous Trump Tower meeting took place. And just like the George Papadopoulos portion of the Spygate saga, all was not as it seemed. The optics weren't good, but nothing illegal happened at this meeting, and Donald Trump Jr. released the email chain leading up to the meeting to the public. Donald Trump Jr. received an email from Rob Goldstone, a publicist he knew from a golf tournament, promising Russian dirt on Hillary if he took a meeting with some Russians. But the Russians in the meeting never provided any dirt on Hillary. Trump Jr.'s brother-in-law, Jared Kushner, left the meeting after 5 minutes, and Paul Manafort fell asleep. Instead of dirt, the Russians talked about adoption and getting Trump Sr. to repeal the Magnitsky Act. The Magnitsky Act placed sanctions on human rights violating Russian businessmen. In response to the sanctions, Russia stopped allowing Americans to adopt Russian children. About a year later, when the story came to light, the fake news media jumped all over this story and said this was the meeting that proved the Trump campaign colluded with Russia, or at the very least, Donald Trump Jr. attempted to collude with the Russians.
Some people have said this could be treason. For the love of God, treason is defined in the Constitution. This is not treason. One said, well, if you take things of tangible value under the campaign laws and treat information like that, then maybe you have a campaign contribution violation. Well, yeah, but we haven't seen that done. You could also treat it like a panda and say it's an endangered species violation. You know, this was a meeting where someone said they had evidence of a possible crime by the opponent of the Trump campaign. They met with this person. I think a lot of people in the city view that as naive. I think a lot of people say, my God, why didn't you use a surrogate, which is how it's done in Washington? But that itself is not a crime. The fact is campaigns and aides meet with foreign leaders and nationals all the time. They share information about trade and other issues. Sometimes they share information that runs against their opponent in a campaign. That is fairly routine.
They didn't ask any questions or do any kind of critical thinking. No one said, if Trump Sr. is really in bed with the Russians, why then would Putin send a Russian lawyer all the way to America without any of the dirt that was supposedly, quote, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump, unquote? If Putin says, hey, I'm sending a box full of stuff to show how much I support you, and then when you open that box, it's completely empty, wouldn't that actually prove that Putin doesn't support you and that you're not in league with him? This story doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is because those weren't regular Russians that entered Trump Tower. Former Soviet counterintelligence officer Renat Akhmetshin and attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya were two of the Russians in that meeting. Veselnitskaya was no Trump fan, and Akhmetshin disliked the entire Trump family, had met Hillary Clinton, was friendly with many of her campaign members, and his lawyer and personal advisor, Edward Lieberman, just so happened to be married to Bill Clinton's former Deputy Chief of Staff and close Hillary Clinton confidant, Evelyn Lieberman. Rinat Akhmetshin and attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya were both working with the same man. That man had been working with Veselnitskaya for years, assisting Russia's efforts to help overturn the Magnitsky Act. That man met with Veselnitskaya for dinner the day before and the day after the Trump Tower meeting, and Veselnitskaya told NBC that he prepared her talking points for the meeting. That man was none other than Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS.
Well, the Russians that are involved in the Trump Tower, the infamous Trump Tower meeting in New York, I call them the Fusion GPS Russians. Fusion GPS was the company that was working for the Clinton campaign and the Democrats, and somehow Glenn Simpson meets with them before and after, and he's actually, these are Russians that he's doing work for. I mean, come on.
Even though he met Veselnitskaya the day before and the day after, Simpson later testified that he was completely unaware of the most important meeting his clients would ever attend for a project Fusion GPS received over $500,000 for. It's equally funny that Simpson, who spent over a decade vilifying Paul Manafort for working with the pro-Russian president of the Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, while Simpson himself was working directly with the Russians to destroy U.S. legislation. Veselnitskaya had previously been in the country through a special dispensation known as immigration parole. Her attempt to renew her immigration parole was blocked by a U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Preet Bharara. Bharara denied her immigration parole in March of 2016, stating that she did not need to return to the United States to work on a legal case she was involved in unless she was serving in the capacity of a witness, which she was not. Someone had Obama's State Department override Bharara's decision and allowed a self-professed informant for the Russian government
информатора. То есть я являюсь адвокатом, и я являюсь информатором.
To enter the country on a B1/B2 non-immigrant visa in June of 2016, just in time for the Trump Tower meeting. These Russians were either Putin's worst agents because they were unable to deliver a simple message, all while being spearheaded by criminal mastermind Rob Goldstone, who didn't even know that there was no such thing as the Crown Prosecutor of Russia. Or there was no derogatory information provided about Hillary Clinton because these Russian agents were also Fusion GPS operatives working on behalf of the Clinton campaign and the DNC to set the Trump campaign up.
The Trump Tower meeting was an obvious setup where you had Fusion GPS, the Clinton campaign operative machine, that was involved in that entire setup. There's numerous examples like this, so I don't think people should forget this. This is a scandal.
George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Sam Clovis, Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort had all been approached by suspicious operatives, and now it was Roger Stone's and Trump campaign advisor Michael Caputo's turn. Michael Caputo received a phone call from Henry Greenberg offering information on Hillary Clinton. Caputo forwarded Greenberg over to Roger Stone, who met with him on May 29th of 2016.
At this very brief meeting, Mr. Greenberg lays it on me that he has information damaging to Hillary Clinton, and he only wants $2 million for it.
Stone laughed Greenberg out of the office. Later, Caputo started researching Greenberg and made some rather startling discoveries.
A dangerous, violent Russian criminal who'd spent 13 years in jail in Russia and the United States for gun crimes in the United States, call me up and offer me dirt on Hillary Clinton. I find out, shortly thereafter, by hiring a private investigator, that the guy had been working for the FBI as an informant for 17 years. In fact, was in the country on FBI informant visas for most of that time. And by the way, he's here now. well. And they did the same thing to Papadopoulos. Drop in some information that they can try and get out later and say that I got that from a Russian.
What we've seen and heard from the president in the past 5 days may be the biggest lie of all. Repeatedly, and with no facts to back him up, making the outrageous claim that the so-called deep state spied on his campaign.
This phony baloney story about a spy on the campaign. To call them a conspiracy theory is to give them too much credit.
The notion that somehow the FBI planted someone inside the campaign to spy on the campaign is just not true.
This unproven narrative of a spy being placed inside his campaign.
Did the intelligence community spy on President Trump and his campain?
No, we did not.
Was it spying?
Well, yeah, I guess it meets the dictionary definition of surveillance or spying. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy though.
Well, he should be.
That's General Clapper on The View. President Trump firing back on Twitter. Quote, "No, James Clapper, I am not happy. Spying on a campaign would be illegal and a scandal to boot." He added, quote, "Even Clapper, world's dumbest former intelligence head who has the problem of lying a lot, used the word spy when describing the illegal activities."
I'll tell you, when we finally find out the truth about this, Director Clapper and the rest of them are going to be wearing some orange suits.
I've known Jim Clapper for years. I am astounded how bad he looks now. I'm astounded how dishonest and incompetent he looks. He was the director of national intelligence. What do you think he was in charge of doing? He was in charge of spying.
Your response?
Well, I sure hope I get to go to the assisted living wing with that orange suit, I guess.
Number 6, fake a defensive briefing to spy on candidate Trump and General Michael Flynn. In 2008, when it began to appear as if Russia was influencing members of John McCain's campaign, George W. Bush's FBI warned McCain so he could dismiss those members. And in 2013, Dianne Feinstein received a warning from Obama's FBI that one of her staff members was being courted by China, which allowed her to get rid of the guy. Donald Trump was afforded no such courtesy.
If you really believed that Trump's campaign was being infiltrated by Russians, why didn't you tell him so he could do something about it?
Excellent question.
To have the Trump campaign collected on is extraordinarily hard because in most circumstances, a U.S. citizen, if you're a U.S. citizen and you're being targeted by the Russians, you are obligated to be told. The FBI is obligated to tell you you're a target because you've done nothing wrong. You're a U.S. citizen.
According to the IG report, in the spring of 2016, Comey, McCabe, and Loretta Lynch toyed with the idea of briefing then-candidate Trump. But ultimately, Bill Priestap, the assistant director of the FBI's counterintelligence division, decided against it. Instead of warning candidate Trump, Andrew McCabe and FBI General Counsel James Baker sent FBI agents to spy on him and his pick for National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, in August of 2016.
And I also want you to know a counterintelligence investigation is not a criminal investigation. They're not trying to solve a crime. They're trying to stop foreign powers from interfering in America. That a counterintelligence investigation is designed to protect Americans from foreign influence. Did they ever try to protect Donald Trump from foreign influence?
They did not brief him, and we lay out on page 55.
As a matter of fact, when they went in and gave a vanilla briefing, the Russians are out there, you better beware. Didn't they have an FBI agent do a 302 on the defensive briefing itself?
They sent one of the supervisory agents from the Crossfire Hurricane team to the briefing, and that agent prepared a report to the file of the briefing.
About what Trump said.
About what Mr. Trump said and what Mr. Flynn said. So the agent was actually doing the briefing, but also using it for the purpose of investigation. We have very significant concerns about that.
If this doesn't bother you, you hate Trump way too much.
Number 7, verify and submit lies to the court. Comey had famously referred to the dossier as salacious and unverified. And McCabe had testified that but for the dossier, there would have been no FISA warrant.
Andy McCabe told us when we deposed him that but for the dossier, they wouldn't have got the warrant. The director of the FBI, who's been fired, said it was salacious and unverified when they took it to a court, a secret court, to get a warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was associated with the Trump campaign.
FBI and department officials told us the Steele reporting, quote, pushed the FISA proposal over the line, close quote, in terms of establishing probable cause, and we concluded that the Steele reporting played a central and essential role in the decision to seek a FISA order.
We said that made up the bulk of the FISA. We were made fun of, we were told that was wrong, that we were lying, when in fact we were 100% right.
Well, turns out the FBI made a giant spreadsheet to keep track of the Steele dossier's lies. The spreadsheet showed that more than 90% of the dossier's claims were either wrong, unverifiable, or just random mess from Google searches. And yes, the FBI knew this before they took it to a secret court and used it as the bulk of the information to get a FISA warrant so they could spy on the Trump campaign. Sometimes I really wonder what they were thinking.
Michael Cohen goes to Prague to pay off Russian hackers. There is a PP tape on Trump.
I don't suppose it's occurred to anyone in this room that if we're going to be illegally spying on a presidential campaign, that maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't leave gigantic pieces of evidence of our crimes out in the open for everyone to see?
President Trump has been a Russian asset for 8 years. Michael Cohen's wife is Russian. Igor Sechin offered Carter Page part of a $12 billion bribe.
Out of curiosity, what exactly have we proved from the dossier?
A Russian diplomat returned home to Russia.
A Russian diplomat went back home to Russia. Whoa. Well, excellent detective work there, guy. I'm sure next you'll be telling me the grass is green and the sky is blue. You've left us in an undefendable position. I don't think we're going to be able to find someone dumb enough to go on TV and support us on these ridiculous claims.
Russian collusion. They colluded. The basic thesis of this dossier, that the Trump campaign was in on it, little pieces of that, little checkable pieces of that have been falling into place almost every day now. This guy from the embassy, Mikhail Kalugin, he really did get called home from the Russian embassy, and now he really is back in Moscow. His name was misspelled in the dossier. And so far, it is us as American citizens, it is us in the press who are connecting the dots on this story, who are figuring this out.
You are fake news.
The Russian regime has been cultivating, supporting, and assisting Trump for at least 5 years. Aim endorsed by Putin has been to encourage splits and divisions in Western alliance.
The bullcrap detector is measuring off the charts. Comey, you've got to stop lying before it's too late. I'm getting a new job. I've had enough of this shit. If at this point you're saying to yourself, I thought that in America you couldn't have secret courts where someone who doesn't like you can make up a bunch of lies and then get the government to spy on you. If that's what you were thinking, then you were correct. You can't do that legally. The Woods procedures are designed to protect American citizens from that exact scenario. The Woods procedures essentially state that any information submitted to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court has to be verified, and exculpatory evidence or evidence that could be used to help clear your name must be included. But the dossier was a bunch of baloney. The court was never told that Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC paid for it, and exculpatory evidence was not included, like how Carter Page had worked with the FBI from 2013 to 2016 to help bust up a Russian spy ring, and how George Papadopoulos told the Walrus that he wasn't working with the Russians. To ensure that Woods procedures are followed, the law requires high-level FBI and DOJ figures to sign off on a Woods file. The people that swore to the court that they were submitting a verified warrant application included FBI Director James Comey, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, Acting Attorney General Dana Puente, and Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates did too, because she was too mean to die when the barn fell on her.
The agents and supervisory agents did not follow or even appear to know certain basic requirements in the Woods procedures. We found that investigators failed to meet their basic obligations of ensuring that the FISA applications were scrupulously accurate. We identified significant inaccuracies and omissions in each of the 4 applications, 7 in the first application and a total of 17 by the final renewal application. And the FISA applications made it appear as though the evidence supporting probable cause was stronger than was actually the case. And as a result, the surveillance of Carter Page continued even as the FBI gathered information that weakened the assessment of probable cause and made the FISA applications less accurate.
As Horowitz stated, there are a whopping 17 errors and omissions in the FISA warrant. And now I'm going to show you how they pretended to verify this mess. Team Hillary used 3 methods to verify the dossier, relying on the reputation of Christopher Steele, circular reporting, and circular intelligence. The FBI's philosophy was that since Christopher Steele had worked with them in the past, the information he provided was reliable. But the FISA warrant, which was initially approved in October of 2016, had to be renewed every 90 days, and it was renewed 3 times. By the first renewal, the FBI, that was paying Christopher Steele, fired him for leaking his relationship with them to the media. The FBI continued to pretend that the man that they had to fire for being untrustworthy was a credible source. The second method that was used for verification, circular reporting, was even more alarming. Circular reporting means using a single source for the basis of a report, but making it seem like there are multiple sources. Glenn Simpson introduced Christopher Steele to Yahoo News reporter Michael Isikoff in September of 2016. That same month, Isikoff wrote an article titled U.S. Intelligence Officials Probe Ties Between Trump Advisor and Kremlin. And the FBI submitted the article that Christopher Steele and his information was the source of to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Team Hillary used Christopher Steele's lies to corroborate Christopher Steele's lies.
There really is no verification other than media reports that were generated by reporters who received the dossier. So the bottom line is the dossier has never been independently confirmed. It was used to get a warrant. They knew the author of the dossier was on the Democratic Party payroll. He hated Trump. They got the warrant anyway. Most Americans should be upset about that.
Then they told the American public that it was perfectly okay to lie to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
Let's go with some of the other nonsense that you're seeing now. You actually have people out there in the media, mainstream media, that are now talking about, well, the regs don't necessarily say that you have to verify all the evidence. Well, look, I think that's crazy talk.
The third method, circular intelligence, may have been the worst of all. Circular intelligence occurs when unconfirmed information is reported by one agency or analyst, and another agency or analyst uses that unconfirmed information as independent proof that their own information has been confirmed by another source.
Chris Steele had direct access to the FBI. He was handing them parts of the dossier. Why did they also want to run it through Bruce Orr at the Justice Department? Seems to me to create weight and credibility behind a document that was completely false. If you can now go tell the press and tell other people, oh, a senior Department of Justice official is also talking about the dossier and also passing it on to the FBI, it gives it weight when in fact it was completely a uncredible, unverified document and a bunch of garbage.
Yeah. Team Hillary took the same Russian lies and dropped them into various parts of the government and the media to give their fairy tale legitimacy. The dossier information entered the CIA through Brennan. Brennan took the dossier information and briefed each of the Gang of 8 members separately from August through September of 2016. The Gang of 8 is a group of congressmen that are briefed on classified intelligence matters. They are comprised of the majority and minority leaders in the House and Senate, along with the chairs and ranking minority members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. This briefing triggered Gang of 8 member Harry Reid to write a letter to Comey demanding he open an investigation into the Trump campaign. The New York Times reported on Reid's letter several days later. Senator Rand Paul stated that Brennan insisted that dossier information be included in the intelligence community assessment called the ICA that was given to Obama. The IG report revealed that Comey and McCabe pushed for dossier information to be included in the ICA for Obama. FBI agent Michael Gaeta served as the FBI's handler for Christopher Steele. Gaeta's first dossier-related meeting with Steele took place on July 5th of 2016, where Steele gave Gaeta the first memo he wrote. Gaeta subsequently provided a copy of that memo to Victoria Nuland of the State Department. Gaeta would continue to have meetings with Steele and pass his information to his FBI colleagues. Additionally, Steele met with numerous members of the media before the election, and if that wasn't bad enough, court papers confirmed that Fusion GPS paid 3 journalists from June of 2016 until February of 2017. The media played their part in the Spygate saga by printing fake news stories about Trump and Russia before America's citizens went to the polls in an attempt to influence the 2016 presidential election. Perkins Coie partner Michael Sussman passed dossier information to FBI General Counsel James Baker. Once again, Perkins Coie was the firm that the Clinton campaign and the DNC paid to hire Fusion GPS to write the dossier in the first place. Sussman later leaked the information, the Alpha Bank portion of the Spygate saga, to the media. Baker would go on and testify that he also received parts of the dossier that the FBI didn't have from Mother Jones reporter David Korn. On October 31st of 2016, Korn published a story anonymously quoting Steele as a confidential source for the FBI, and the FBI fired Steele for the disclosure on November 1st of 2016. But later that same month, the FBI asked Bruce Orr to re-establish contact with Steele, which Orr maintained, at least through November of 2017. Dossier information was funneled to DOJ member Bruce Orr through 3 separate people: his wife Nellie Orr, Christopher Steele, and Glenn Simpson. Bruce Orr passed that information to FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Lisa Page, and later Peter Strzok. Then Orr shared the information with senior-level DOJ members, 2 of which, Zainab Ahmad and Andrew Weissman, would later work for Special Counsel Robert Mueller. Orr went on and testified that in July of 2016, he warned that the information from Steele was unverified, paid for by the Clinton campaign, his wife worked for Fusion GPS, and Christopher Steele was desperate that Donald Trump not become the president. Sir Andrew Wood worked as a contractor for Orbis. Orbis was the research company that Christopher Steele owned. Wood was also the former British ambassador to Russia. Wood made sure he met with Senator John McCain and McCain's aide David Kramer on November 19th of 2016. McCain's aide passed the information to 14 different journalists, including Mother Jones reporter David Korn, who would go on and publish the dossier in full on January 10th of 2017. McCain passed the dossier information to Victoria Nuland at the State Department and Comey in December of 2016, but both of them had already been briefed. There was also a second dossier. It was put together by longtime Clinton operative Cody Shearer.
Well, Cody is one of the card-carrying original members of the Black Ops team that Hillary developed over the years to chase down and blackmail the women with whom Bill was involved to cow them into silence. Kathleen Willey very explicitly mentions him as part of that.
The second dossier echoed the claims of the original. Shearer shared his dossier with the media and another longtime Clinton operative, Sidney "Sid Vicious" Blumenthal. Blumenthal had been part of the Clinton machine since the 90s, and was known as the Clintons' political hitman because he smeared people that got in the Clintons' way. Blumenthal was so bad that Obama banned him from serving in his administration because Blumenthal was the father of the birther movement.
Sidney Blumenthal, a longtime Clinton confidant and friend, was peddling the birther lie in 2008, according to the former Washington bureau chief of the McClatchy News Group, Sidney Blumenthal, who was banned from joining the Obama administration by the Obama White House precisely because he trafficked in a lot of questionable information about Barack Obama.
Blumenthal passed the second dossier information to Jonathan Weiner at the State Department. Weiner gave dossier number 2 information to Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele then gave his dossier information to Weiner. Weiner was also in contact with Glenn Simpson in September of 2016. Weiner passed the Steele dossier information to the DOJ and took it back to the State Department, where Secretary of State John Kerry was briefed. On October 11th of 2016, Christopher Steele personally briefed the Department of State. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Kathleen Kavalak took notes on the meeting and forwarded them to the FBI. Her notes reveal that the FBI knew before they submitted the FISA warrant application that Christopher Steele had hinted that his client was the DNC and they needed to get the dossier released to the public before the election. Kavalak also noted Christopher Steele mentioned a Russian operation being run out of the Russian consulate in Miami. Kavalak then wrote that it is important to note that there is no Russian consulate in Miami. The FBI, without a doubt, was aware that the man they were paying was also being paid by the Democrats, was politically motivated, and was presenting false information.
But for the dossier, there would be no warrant against Carter Page. The meeting on October the 11th was 10 days before the FISA warrant application. So the FBI was on notice that their confidential informant went to the Department of State to urge the Department of State to take the dossier and leak it to the public to affect the election. That's about as sick as it gets.
Right now, you may be wondering about where Christopher Steele got all that bad information from that was spreading through Washington, D.C. like a virus. Fortunately, Steele revealed 2 of his sources to Kathleen Kavalak at the State Department, and she recorded the names of his sources in her notes. Steele's sources were none other than the former director of Russian intelligence, Vyacheslav Trubnikov, and former Deputy Prime Minister and Putin's personal advisor, Vladislav Surkov. Surkov is known as the Grey Cardinal, Putin's Rasputin, and Putin's puppet master for his ability to deceive and manipulate people from behind the scenes. So Steele's sources are basically Putin's best friends because, I'm sure they'll tell the truth.
The Russians saw the Democrats coming. They set this all up. They knew this would be a poison pill, and they set up tripwires on both sides. So ultimately, no matter who got the information, how it was used, they come out on top. And the Democrats were too stupid to both understand it's illegal and too stupid to understand the third and fourth order effects of the damage this would cause.
On October 21st, 2016, the FBI used one party's opposition research document as the basis to go to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other party's campaign. That happened. Democrat National Committee, the Clinton campaign, paid Perkins Coie law firm, who hired Fusion GPS, who then hired a foreigner, Christopher Steele, who did what? Talked to Russians and put together this salacious, unverified document that became the basis to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. They did it. And when they went to the court, they didn't tell them important things like who paid for it. They didn't tell them that Christopher Steele had already told the FBI and the Justice Department that he was, quote, desperate to stop Trump.
Team Hillary understood they were about to submit a bunch of lies to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. But submitting the lies to the court was easier said than done because Team Hillary was in a race against the clock with Admiral Rogers. Admiral Rogers discovered during Plan A that the FBI had illegally given private contractors access to raw FISA data, and he had ordered a compliance audit. Team Hillary knew they had to submit the Carter Page FISA warrant application to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court before Admiral Rogers finished his audit and alerted the court to his findings. And for his heroic efforts to expose government corruption, Director of National Intelligence Clapper and Defense Secretary Ash Carter recommended to Obama that Admiral Rogers be fired. But Obama didn't do it. The Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence are required to provide the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court with annual certifications stating that the intelligence community has been and will be following minimization and targeting procedures. On September 26th of 2016, Assistant Attorney General and Head of the Department of Justice's National Security Division, John Carlin, submitted the government's proposed 2016 702 certifications. Carlin was aware of the January 7, 2016 Inspector General report noting irregularities with the 702 queries, as well as Admiral Rogers' compliance audit. But Carlin hid that information from the court and announced that he was resigning the next day. Lisa Page would later testify that Carlin was briefed on the FBI's investigation activities by Andrew McCabe. Carlin's lies by omission allowed the Carter-Page FISA warrant to be approved by the court without any additional scrutiny on October 21st of 2016, just 3 days before Admiral Rogers informed the court of the FISA violations. And while Team Hillary may have won that battle, the war was far from over. It's now election night, November 8th of 2016. Donald Trump has just become the 45th president of the United States. And Hillary, who's supposed to be making her concession speech, was nowhere to be found. Panic was setting in on Team Hillary as they realized that all the laws they had broken were going to come to light. As President of the United States, Donald Trump would now have access to the intelligence they had, and then some. They realized they needed to come up with something fast so they didn't all go to jail. The next day, Hillary Clinton finally emerged and gave a concession speech, the likes of which the American public had not seen before. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and please share it. You can help us continue to fight in the war against disinformation by donating at paypal.me/rightleftofcenter and at subscribestar.com/rightleftofcenter. I'm Right from Right Left of Center, and if you're watching, you're probably right too.